So I have many concrete examples from my own teaching practices because, like I emphasized earlier, I do teach philosophy, rhetoric, and the English discipline as well as game studies. So there's several of them, and let me share a few. Um, So, for example, this is a very easy way if you're an English teacher and you're trying to teach students about the relationship of audience to writing. And what that means is you are not going to write an effective piece of writing if you don't consider who you're writing to. This is a basic concept for students to consider because you certainly wouldn't be writing the same way to your parents as, for example, to your boss. You have to think about who you're speaking so you can customize the language that you use, the tone that you use, and the words that you're able to use, right? So an example would be a game that I assign often is called A Duck Has an Adventure. This is kind of an interactive fiction game. It's graphical though, in that when you're clicking through it, you're following the duck on its adventure, and depending on what you select, the duck actually have different kind of life outcomes. For example, based on what you do, he might become a pirate, or he might be married, or he might be a bum, fail at life, or he might just be a college student and so forth. So many different life paths for this duck. So when I do this, I ask the students to play it. The game probably takes no more than 15 minutes for regular players. It could take up to 30 minutes depending on the speed of your students. And I ask them a couple of questions. For example, who is the audience of this game? What would the audience really need to know in order to get the joke of the game? Because there's a lot of in-joke in that game that uses adult language. So younger learners might not necessarily understand the joke. If they don't understand the joke, this is a perfect moment for the teacher to step in and go, well, why don't you understand the joke? What words were used in the game that made you feel confused? What actions were the duck doing that feels nonsensical to you? Okay, so also in terms of signifiers, so what game symbolizes, such as the text and the images or objects are in the game, give you the clues of what kind of audience will understand this game. So there's many ways to dissect the game itself. And also, when you are playing or while you are playing, what assumptions were you making that were later subverted by the outcome? So for example, when you're playing and you get to a crossroad, and the game tells you select one option or the other, maybe you already predicted in your head that this is exactly how the game's going to progress. You might write this down before you progress, because I often ask students to do that. Write down what you think is going to happen next. So the students will write this down before you progress the next game level. Then the students start playing, and then they're often surprised by how the game progresses based on the original selection. This is a way for students to do creative writing and thinking about future orientation of the game. Where the game want you to go to, and where did you actually desire for the game to go to, and discuss and compare the differences between them. So that's one way for an English teacher to do that. And let me give you another one, because I do have several. Another possibility is, in the rhetoric course, we talk about rhetorical appeals, okay? Rhetorical appeals refers to using certain appeals that would appeal to the audience sensibility, logic, feelings, and also how well they're willing to listen to your persuasion. So what exactly are you persuading them to do that? And what techniques are you using to persuade them? And one of the techniques is called pathos. Pathos is also known as appeal to emotions, okay? So appealing to the audience emotions. But how exactly do you do that? When you're looking at literature, or when you're looking at a news article, for example, the way you appeal to an audience emotion is to figure out what the audience beliefs are. What do they like or dislike? And you are going to write sentences or ideas that customizes or tailors to the audience tastes, okay? So for example, there's another game that my students play called Nothing You Have Done Deserves Such Praise. It is an art game. It's very much tongue-in-cheek, okay? So I asked the student to play through the game, and this game is also about a 15-minute, maybe 30-minute play, depending on the student's speed. And the first question I asked them is, provide verbal, audio, and visual examples that express the game's pathos. What kind of pathos does the game express? So if the game's title is called Nothing You Have Done Deserves Such Praise, okay, it's obviously a joke. It's really saying, yes, the whole game, the experience is you are continuously praised by the game. The game tells you you're awesome, you're a wonderful human being, and so forth. But it gets to become too much. You're getting praised almost every other minute. You're awesome and so forth, to the point where it no longer feels like a praise. It feels like a joke. So the students are going to dissect the game going, okay, here are some of the visuals I saw. Here's an animal, here is an explosion, here's how fast I can speed through the game and so forth. These components help me get a sense of the game's emotional appeal, pathos. Also, based on the combination of those elements, the students start to figure out what exactly is the main claim of the game. So in the sense of what exactly is the thesis statement of the game? What is the game trying to argue? In fact, in this game, it's really not trying to tell you that you are awesome. It's really not trying to tell you that you deserve all the praise in the world. It's actually saying that you probably don't deserve all these praises. You have to earn the praise, not just hear the praise as if you are deserving of praise. So that's another example of how you would use games to teach. And I'll do one more. Another game that I love using is called Atum, and that's spelled A-T-U-M. It's a game created by a lot of college students on a project. And what they were trying to do is explore the concept of eternal recurrence. And that's the concept. It both occurred in religion as well as philosophical studies, okay? The idea that one's life repeats over and over and over again, and upon each repetition, the same events happen over and over again. So in certain religions, for example, in Buddhism, that's called reincarnation, right? One repeats one's life cycle. Even if one is born into different kind of life, different kind of animal form and so forth, there are certain events that just keep on repeating in one's life experiences. So in my philosophy class, I asked students to apply Friedrich Nietzsche's discussion of eternal recurrence to analyze the game Atum, okay? So how does the game allow us to experience that? Is there any way for us to escape the repetition that's experienced in the game? Because when you play through the game, you play through from level 1 through level 10, for example, and then you go back to the origin of the game. So nothing you do actually affects the exact outcome. You can affect, for example, the in-game actions. You can do that. You can change up to how fast you run. You can change how many times you jump. Those elements you can change. But the end goal is the same, because when you reach the end goal, you go back to the beginning of the game. So I asked the questions to the students: how does the game express this? Assuming that the student play through it and figure out, oh, there is this theory that's in play here. That's how this game is designed. Also, I asked them another question, which is, do you actually have freedom, a freedom of willpower or agency under this kind of circumstance, which everything is repeating constantly? Are you able to free yourself? And if so, how do you do that? Okay, so this will be an example of how I use Atum in a philosophy course. Because I also teach game studies, and game studies is a field where many scholars from many disciplines are contributing to the study of games, I see game-based learning used everywhere through the scholarly journals. So for example, at least through higher education, because I teach in colleges, I see history classes where history professors are using games to examine or critique or design counterfactual history games. So counterfactual history means an alternate history. For example, if a student is playing a game about World War II, or for example, the Nazis, what the Nazis done to the world, the student might design an alternate history of the game to play out what would have happened, you know, if the Nazis won. This horrible vision of exactly what would happen if they won. So this is an examination of possibilities of history, because history is, you know, there are certain factors that change the course of history. history classes are using games to examine just that. And a lot of games are actually counterfactual history games. Rhetoric courses, we just lightly discuss how you can actually use games to learn about rhetoric, and I've seen lots of professors do that. I also seen professors where they are in physics classes, they use games such as Angry Birds to study its game physics and compare the game physics to real world physics to see if the game physics actually follow real world physics. We have math classes that I've seen where they're using mathematics to calculate the possibility of chance, the chance and wins in a game. So students are trying to actively reflect on how many chances do I have to win at this game, or what is my percentage for actually winning. Business courses, you know, we've seen professors who are using games or guild marketing system to learn how markets work, or does it actually demonstrate real business principle in reality. We also have cultural studies. This is very interesting for me, where instructors are using games such as games from Japan, games from China, and comparing it to games in the US, for example. And they're trying to see how those games express dominant culture versus minority culture. How do they depict them, and what is the relationship between dominant and minority cultures, and so forth. And the last one that I was absolutely fascinated about is there are some grad students right now working on these projects for archaeology, where they're trying to preserve history by designing artifacts and architecture and buildings inside the game world to re-envision them since they're broken and so forth, okay, in reality, because we don't have those artifacts anymore. So there are many, many different ways where game-based learning is happening. What I think that what I do recommend is to start, because game-based learning is so there's so much interest in it right now, and really almost every discipline there are scholars actively studying games at this current moment. I really recommend instructors, whether you're in K-12 or in higher ed, to explore certain sites to understand how games work. For example, we have DIGRA.org. That's a really great resource where open source articles are available, where scholars from different disciplines are writing papers about games, or what theories they think are applicable to the study of games. There's another one that's pretty direct, gamestudies.org. That's directly a site, a journal actually, that actually explores and allows scholars to submit papers, and also is completely open access, open access articles. So anyone can go on there and read articles. And then lastly, because I'm also a founding facilitator of the Metagame Book Club, where we're offering sessions to read articles, especially academic articles, research materials, and also books, from popular books to academic books regarding games. I certainly will welcome anyone who's interested to join our Metagame Book Club and kind of explore those topics with us as we talk to other educators who are interested in this topic.